Do you think LA is still a good place to live?
LA is still my favorite city in the world. I mean, and I've been to a lot of different cities. I think hands down, LA is the best city, mostly because of the weather. The frustration I have with LA is that it has so much more potential. LA was a better city 5 years ago, significantly better city. Nightlife was exceptional. Restaurants were exceptional. Businesses were coming in. There was a vibrance in the city. The movie industry was doing really well. The homeless problem was under control. Crime was not rampant. There was a sense of optimism in Los Angeles 5 years ago. Now, a lot of that's gone. It's still my favorite city, although I do honestly spend a lot more time in Newport Beach than I used to, and traveling. So I'm not as just optimistic on Los Angeles as I once was, but it still remains my favorite city.
So what would you say are the main three things that caused Los Angeles to go from, the great city that it once was 5 years ago to, in your opinion, still the best city, but much worse now?
Yeah, good question. Pretty simple answer. A lack of crime enforcement, and that's through a myriad of different things. Like they got rid of cash bail. They let criminals out. I mean, I had my house broken into. I had my car broken into. Those guys get out like a day later. I mean, there's just now we have a new district attorney that is changing things, but let's see how that goes. We also have our lowest number of cops that I think we've had in decades. Per capita, we have our lowest number of cops.
Is that due to the
decades.
defund the police initiative, or is it
Yeah,
due
that
to just like
and just a general difficulty in recruitment because there's been such a negative connotation towards police officers that I think they have a very difficult time. So they have a lot of retirement and they're not replacing them. And we have a huge budget crisis. So we don't have the money to be paying new officers. So yeah, we've been mismanaged. I mean, financially mismanaged. I mean, we have $1 billion deficit, which for a city is massive.
How does the city of Los Angeles have $1 billion deficit when you guys have like the highest taxes across the entire country?
Well, it's because a lot of wealthy people have left. And so LA's answer, unfortunately, to every problem is an additional tax, like the mansion tax. Instead of learning how to solve problems, they just tax more. And the problem is that used to work. For 100 years, that worked. California was able to tax. LA was able to tax and continue to increase taxes because people did not vote with their feet. They couldn't really leave. We were not as mobile as we are now. After COVID, everything changed. Now, so many people are leaving. I've got more clients that have left Los Angeles over just taxes alone in the last 5 years than in my entire, probably 5 times as many in the last 5 years than my entire career before that combined. And it's a big problem. So you don't get tax revenue. Mansion tax is a perfect example. They thought it was going to raise $1 billion a year. It raised about $300 million a year. So it was not even a third of what they expected because they assume that nothing's going to change and people except for the tax getting paid. That's not what happens. What happens is people leave. Developers are not building in Los Angeles. You don't see any multifamily construction, which kind of is counterintuitive to solving the homeless problem. You don't see any investment. You don't see people hiring plumbers and electricians, and you don't see properties trading. So that creates a economic disincentive and less revenue for the city and the state. So until they can figure out how to solve their problems without just trying to additionally tax, and I'm not philosophically against taxing the wealthy at all, but you can't tax someone $1 and lose $1.50 in economic activity. That just doesn't make sense.
What I find interesting is they have this initiative to try to make it really easy to get expedited permits to add an ADU to a property in Los Angeles. And so guess who sees that and they calculate, I'm going to get a great ROI if I go through this new thing that they just created because they're finally doing a right thing to solve the homeless crisis, to solve the affordable housing crisis, is none other than the man sitting to the left of me, Graham.
Fuck. Yeah, you did an ADU?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people have done ADUs.
Oh my gosh, it has been a nightmare.
Working with the city, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
It has been an absolute nightmare. So when I looked at this, I thought the cash-on-cash ROI was incredible, and it is. Going through the city of Los Angeles has been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Getting the city inspector, they don't want to inspect. It goes straight to voicemail for days. And then on Fridays, when a tenant's supposed to move it on the Monday, they say, "Oh, actually, I'm running late. We're going to cancel this." They don't want to work on the Fridays anymore, and so then they reschedule it. And then They swap inspectors. They get a new inspector who is actually
And he finds other new problems.
Yeah, we need a sewer line CCTV, and you have to schedule it with one of our approved vendors, and the wait on that is 1 to 2 weeks. We already did the work. Here's a CT. No, we need from one of our inspectors.
Trust
we
me.
did this months ago. Oh, you need a new one now.
I did an ADU in one of my houses, and I was getting past final. They sent a new inspector for the same reason, and he measured the tread difference in my spiral staircase, and he measured like 6.5, maybe 7 inches, and it was supposed to be like a max of 6.5. And he told me I have to redo like my $10,000 spiral staircase, and it delayed everything like a month. And then now I've got another client north of Los Angeles. He wants to do get a movie theater permitted, and they're saying that because he's doing work, he's too far away from a fire hydrant, so he has to bring in a fire hydrant. $120,000 to bring in this fire hydrant to do a movie theater. Like, no one's going to do that. Like, there's no discretion, there's no common sense. It's too bureaucratic. When you build a new house now, they are requiring like this drainage system where you collect this water because, I don't know, we need water conservation or something, even though it's just a bucket basically. And it costs like $35,000 to install this. And so, you're trying to build something and an additional $35,000, and then there's several of these requirements. People are like, why? I don't want to build in LA anymore.
Does this seem like mostly a policy issue? Real quick, how many times have you actually panicked because you could not find your wallet? I'm talking full stop, heart drop, where it's complete panic, because I have way too many times, and now there's a wallet that just shows up in your Find My app. Me telling you that it's been a game changer is a complete understatement, because I cannot tell you how many times I've lost my wallet. But with MagBack, I just open Apple's Find My app to play a sound if it's nearby or just see it on a map.
That's why we're so excited to partner with MagBack. Honestly, we've been waiting to talk about this because they make a smart wallet, and it's one of those products where once you see how it works, you'll just immediately want it.
It carries up to 9 cards while still looking sleek, plus they're made of genuine top-grain leather that gets softer and develops more character the more you carry it.
It also doubles as a phone stand, and it's compatible with QI wireless chargers, so you don't sacrifice your MagSafe capabilities.
In addition to wallets, MagBack offers minimalistic phone cases, multi-chargers, wireless chargers, Tesla chargers, and rim cases and key tags. Funny enough, one of my favorite products is the Tesla-compatible charger. I have it in my Tesla. I absolutely love it. If you have a Tesla, I highly recommend it.
And you could get 15% off of any of these products using the code iced15 when you go to creators.magback.com/the-iced-coffee-hour. The link is also down below in the description.
Once again, that is code iced15 for 15% off at creators.magback.com/iced-coffee-hour. Link down below in the description. Does this seem like mostly a policy issue? Is it a culture issue where people just don't... The culture is you can't punish people. You know what I mean? Like, if someone does a bad job, you can't say, "Oh, you're fired," because if you fire someone, then it's for some
discrimination.
That's just a problem with government.
Or is it a legal issue because you have so many people lawyering up in the state of California, and lawyers can just basically siphon the funds from anybody and just sue for anything.
There are so many... I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for 20 years. Actually, I don't know if my license is still active, but who cares? I'll still speak on it. So, example, when I built my Newport Beach office, we had to hire an ADA expert. Someone who comes and kind of guides you in terms of what you need to do to be ADA compliant, American with Disabilities Act, which we're all for helping disabled people, right? But we want to do it in an efficient manner. What he told me is that you'll have attorneys that have no clients. Like no one with a disability will ever go, has gone on the property, but they're allowed to just sue on behalf of the class. So they'll come in, they'll sneak into your office, they'll pretend they're a client, whatever. They'll go in your bathroom, they'll measure the distance between like the toilet and the wall, or in my case, there was they said that my back parking lot was like 2 degrees too sloped. And so they said I had to spend like $40,000 redoing my entire back. And then there was a sidewalk, and then there was an entrance to the parking lot. And so the wheelchair would have to go like 10 feet into, and come back. And they said, no, you have to have a pathway right through. So I had to spend like another $15,000 cutting through like this retaining wall. Then I had to spend about $15,000 on an automated back door. You're not allowed to go out and open the door. You have to have an automated door. So I spent about $70,000 to be ADA compliant, because they said lawyers will come in and they'll measure the slopage and they'll do all this stuff, and and then they'll sue you. I have not had anyone try to access my property in 5 years with a wheelchair. If they did, they would have been able to get on very easily. But I've spent $70,000. Now, I personally think I would have preferred to put $70,000 into an account to help people get wheelchairs, to get prosthetic limbs, like to actually help people with disabilities, as opposed to repaving a parking lot that was fine in the first place. My landlord at Sunset Plaza had to spend $250,000 redoing his parking lot because of a slopage issue. That's not money well spent. That's just bureaucracy taking over. I'm all for, and I think many people are, for helping other people. I'm for taxation, if it's done intelligently. I'm for helping. My mom's entire job was placing people with disabilities in job placement. I'm just for efficiency. There's another example. There's a building that one of my clients lives in on Beverly, and the city required them to put middle income, low income housing, in the building, even though the building is a building for billionaires. So it starts at $5 million, it goes up to $25 million. So the building has had a very difficult time selling units because a lot of people don't want to have low income in their building that they're spending $20 million on, because they're paying an HOA of like $15,000 a month. And yet half the building's occupants, because a lot of these billionaires don't live there. So there may be 30 units for sale and maybe 10 units that are low income. But of those 30 units for sale, maybe only 5 or 6 people live there full time. So it's actually a building more predominantly lived in by low income than by billionaires. And the low income pays 0 HOA, so it's the city that subsidizes it. And yet you've got the wealthy people paying $10,000, $15,000 a month for the pool and for the gym and for valet.
How do low income people get in that building to begin with?
Just you have
Is
to
there a
not
lottery system, or
yeah, you have to not make a certain amount of money for like 10 years. So if you ever make too much money, you get kicked off the list. So
theoretically, someone
the
could be.
incentive is you can be living with billionaires if you continually try to make less money.
Well, and
So
by the
they're
way,
getting
I'm
like
not even
$30,000 to $50,000 a month in value of living in that building.
Well, they're getting way more because they're not paying any HOA. So that's $50,000 to $100,000 just in free HOA amenities, and then they have valet. So, for example, all the building's amenities are accessible to everyone. So the low income obviously will have 24-hour valet and concierge and food brought up and pool, gym.
So how do they get that for free when the person working their ass off,
so the city,
making $100,000 a year?
The city requires the building to create, like, I think in this case it was 10 or 12 units that are low income. So listen, I'm not even theoretically against this. Here's the problem, though. The problem is the building is having a very difficult time selling the luxury units. So the building lost maybe $30 to $40 million in value because they lost so many potential buyers. So I think it would have been better for the building just to put in, let's say, a few $1 million into a fund for low-income housing, and then they go out and you buy a building that's for sale, like an older building, and you get with 150 units in it. And now you've housed 150 people instead of 8 or 10 for $5 million instead of the building losing $30 or $40 million in sales. So it's just so inefficient. That's the problem with it. I don't mind the concept. I actually appreciate the concept. The problem is it's so unbelievably inefficient in how much money is lost and economic activity is lost and sales are lost to help, 10 people when that money could be used.
Speaking of that, I had a clip recently go somewhat viral where I said, and I made the argument, that a lot of buildings in Los Angeles are actually more valuable empty than they are with tenants in them. And I know a lot of people who purposely keep their buildings completely empty because they don't want to deal with tenants. And if they want to sell at some point in the future,
rent control,
they can't.
not tenants.
Because of rent control. But
So
their building is more valuable
rent
empty.
The problem with rent controls, and many studies show this, rent control does well in the short term. So rent control manages prices and keeps people in units in the short term. In the long term, it hurts. It hurts the very people that it's trying to help. It actually increases rents because it decreases supply, and it decreases investment into the community. So as an example, nobody wants to buy multifamily in Los Angeles because of all the rent control problems. Nobody wants to build single family in Los Angeles because of the rent control problems, because of the mansion tax. So it actually, in the long run, and just about every study bears this out, but it's really hard for people to change their ways. I mean, you think that California is just going to all of a sudden admit, hey, rent control was a bad idea? No, they're just going to keep doubling down like they do on everything. They're not going to admit that the mansion tax was a terrible idea. You won't get one proponent of that to ever admit that. So people are just very stuck in their ways, and they're not willing to think critically. Even though I think all the intentions are great. The intentions behind rent control are great. The intentions behind the mansion tax were great. It's just the inefficient implementation.
Do you think California is doomed? Do you think that it will just continue to get worse and worse and worse
No,
and
no,
worse?
I think-
Or when
I
will
think-
when will they realize how bad it is to actually reverse some of this,
Well, some of it's already
bureaucratic
happening.
layering they've done?
Yeah, some of it's already happening. People are pretty hard-headed. I think the problem with people generally is that they'll put their own self-interested dogma in front of a critically thought out answer. Most people like to be in camps, like Democrats like to always do the same thing. Republicans like to always do the same thing, and they don't question it. Many people are just blindly led down the path, and they just think that everything that one party does is accurate. When the truth is, both parties have really good ideas, and the answer is generally in the middle. When any one party gets too much control, and it'd be the same thing I would say the same thing for a Republican-led state that is just, has too much dominance for too long. They veer off track. California's veered off track because it's been dominated too long by the same people that don't have any pushback, and there's really no debate. There's just simply no debate. Rent control is not debated in Los Angeles. It's not debated in California. Of course it should be, but it's just not. I think that I don't think there's any doom. I think California will remain the best state in the nation.
But it's continued to go downhill.
It has. I think that there was an awakening. I think what happened was California had a captive audience and Los Angeles had a captive audience before COVID. COVID, when people were able to not work, in the office, and more things are done online, and people are just generally more mobile, I think they lost their audience. And so now California has to attract people because of its policies, when it used to just have to attract people because of its jobs and its weather. And now that jobs can be done anywhere, all we have left is weather. And that's just not enough for a lot of people to stay.